Greetings and welcome to another Tomorrow's World webcast. My name is Wallace Smith. It's wonderful to have you here. Actually, several people sent me the news item that I want to talk about today, and I can understand why. It actually is a fairly interesting step in terms of Bible prophecy. It's a report from Breitbart. Now, normally I don't try to quote from sources that I'm afraid might alienate half of our viewers. You know, it's like you quote from Fox News and you lose all your MSNBC fans. You quote from MSNBC and you lose all your Fox News fans. But this one actually does check out. It really is actually a pretty good report. It's from the London office of Breitbart from April 20th, 2016. The title is Report: Germany Annexing Dutch Military as Secretive EU Army Begins to Take Shape. Now, all of that said, let me just highlight before I read a few things. People will sometimes mock God's prophecies concerning what Europe is going to do. That there will be a massive European military, that the beast power, which we talk about, get our booklet on that if you've never read about that, the Beast of Revelation. And there is going to be a powerful military presence in Europe. And people will mock that, talk about how Europe seems so devoted to not having a powerful or strong military, not being militaristic. But these things are going to happen. The article itself, the fullness of the article actually is worth a read. I'm just going to grab a couple of comments. One comes from Germany's defense minister, Ursula von der Leyen, and she mentions in this article, the article quotes her. It says, "The European army is our long-term goal, but first we have to strengthen the European Defense Union." She adds, "To achieve this, some nations with concrete military cooperation must come to the fore, and the Germans and the Dutch are doing this." Now that said, the article talks about secretive EU army. To me, it doesn't seem all that secretive. For those looking, it actually is reported in the news here and there. But notice that the European army is our long-term goal. We didn't put that in her mouth. She said that herself. It also quotes UK Independence Party MEP defense spokesman Mike Hookham. Mike Hookham, MEP, is a minister there in the European government, or in the UK government. And it says this. He says, "The EU is moving towards a common defense and foreign policy regime with an EU army as the goal." While Britain remains in the EU, we cannot escape being part of this dangerous setup. The EU was supposed to be about corralling Germany military dominance in Europe. That aspiration has clearly died, and just as Germany now politically dominates the EU, this latest move with the Dutch army shows that in time, Germany wants to expand and control as much as it can militarily. Now, a lot of people forget what Mike Hookham here says. The fact that originally the idea of binding Europe together post-World War II was to corral the ambitions of Germany. And yet it's all sort of turning around where rather than corralling the ambitions of Germany, Germany is becoming the leading nation of Europe, of a banded together Europe, not simply politically and economically, but now also potentially militarily. Now, I bring these things up again because, like I mentioned, some people have mocked what God says in prophecy about Europe and about Germany leading the way, and yet, mock as they want, prophecy still moves forward. You know, we've been talking about an army for Europe for years, actually decades, the better part of a century, more than half of a century. This ministry has talked about that based on the prophecies of the Bible. Why do we stick with it when all the naysayers say, "Oh, no, it's just not going to happen?" Is because we don't interpret the Bible based on the news. We interpret the news based on the Bible. Because if God says it, it is going to happen, and there will be a European army. As actually the Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 3 and verse 4, "Indeed, let God be true, but every man a liar." If God said it's going to happen prophetically, you can take that to the bank. Thanks for joining us. Please check out all of our resources on tomorrowsworld.org.